All right, for more, let's bring in Conservative MP, Deputy Finance Critic, Michael Cooper. Hey, Michael, good to see you.
Good afternoon, Todd.
So, whoa, let's put the brakes on. Let's do extra verifications. That's what Justin Trudeau is saying today. What do you think?
It simply doesn't add up. The Prime Minister says he pushed back on May the 8th. Well, there's a number of problems with that. First of all, we was incurring eligible expenses, in other words, given the green light to move ahead, administering or setting up the program on May the 5th, 3 weeks before it even went to Cabinet. Now, it's interesting what happened on May the 5th, namely that Craig Kielburger spoke to someone in the PMO. I can only imagine what that conversation was about. And even if the Prime Minister supposedly pushed back on May the 8th, there's not a lot to show for that. We continued to incur eligible expenses for 17 days until May 22nd when Cabinet gave it the green light. The Prime Minister said he had concerns and wanted to see that due diligence was done. What due diligence was done? At committee, the Prime Minister was asked whether he knew that the board chair of WE had resigned, whether he knew that WE was in breach of its banking covenants, and whether he knew that it was not going to be administered by WE Charity, but by a real estate shell company. He knew none of those things, so clearly he did no due diligence. It's all very convenient for the Prime Minister to pretend that he knew nothing, that it was all thrust upon him, and to throw the civil service under the bus. It's shameful, really.
Hey, Michael, we were covering it, all the testimony, of course, here on News Channel. I know you were part of it, doing your job to hold the government to account, as the NDP and the Bloc were doing as well. Tough questions, but important questions to try and get the answers to. Did you get any accountability? Was there any transparency in your mind from either the Prime Minister or his Chief of Staff after Katie Telford?
None whatsoever. The Prime Minister and the Chief of Staff concocted a story that it requires a suspension of disbelief, and any time questions were asked, like 5 people in the PMO who talked to WE, who were they? What dates? What was the context? No answers were provided. So, but I'm not surprised. I mean, this is a Prime Minister who has a record of not being transparent, and a Prime Minister who has repeatedly breached Conflict of Interest Act, and based upon his testimony yesterday, he all but confirmed it. And what was even somewhat interesting in that is that the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff said that they were cognizant of it, but then they just didn't care, effectively, because they proceeded. The Prime Minister was involved. He didn't recuse himself. He actively participated in the decision-making process with respect to an organization that had no capacity to deliver the program, where there was no due diligence done, but an organization that could very conveniently have benefited the Prime Minister and his family, enriched his wife and his mother and brother in the sum of more than $500,000. It all just doesn't add up, other than that this was a deal to benefit the Prime Minister's friends.
The strategy seems to be, Michael, and it is evolving on the Liberal side, but that, this was about the kids, this was about a pandemic, we had to get this stuff out quickly in order to help people. Maybe we were a bit clumsy, we've apologized, there were some oversights clearly. In retrospect, we should have known better. Let's move on. What do you think?
Doesn't make any sense, because there is a program that is available, that's existed for 2 decades, and it's called the Canada Student Summer Jobs Program. All the government needed to do was provide additional resources to the Canada Summer Jobs Program. The government didn't do that. They cut the Canada Summer Jobs Program and then handed a $500 million contribution to friends of the Prime Minister. And what a boondoggle it has been. The whole program, in terms of how it was designed, was so flawed in so many ways right from the beginning. It's just, it not only speaks to the lack of integrity and a lack of awareness on the part of the Prime Minister about conflicts of interest, but it also just highlights this government's total incompetence.
Okay, so it's been a month, as you know, since this all began. What else do you want to know about it all?
Well, we need to continue to follow the evidence. We do need to hear from additional people from WE, including the CFO, who appears to have played a very, very big role in multiple of these WE organizations. We also heard that there were 5 people in the PMO who were in contact with the WE organization at the relevant time. We certainly will need to hear from some, and maybe all of those individuals. So we're going to continue to press for hearings. We're going to continue to demand answers that Canadians deserve.
Michael Cooper joining us. Wonderful to have you on as always. Really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. And